In the fall of 69 BC, a single Roman legion was getting ready for what seemed like an impossible challenge, taking on a much larger Armenian army. The upcoming battle, known as Tigranocerta, would go down in history as one of Rome's most stunning victories. Leading the charge was Consul Lucius Licinius Lucullus, who trusted in more than just brute force. His secret weapon was a carefully planned strategy, down to the smallest detail. This all took place during the Third Mithridatic War, the final and most decisive clash between Rome and Mithridates VI, king of Pontus. This ruler, famous for his military genius and fierce opposition to the Republic, had spent years challenging Roman expansion in Asia Minor. In 88 AD, he ordered the massacre of tens of thousands of Italian settlers in what Roman sources call the Asiatic Vespers, an event that cemented his reputation as a deadly enemy of Rome. After several defeats, Mithridates sought refuge in the kingdom of his son-in-law, Tigranes II. Great king of Armenia, Tigranes wasn't just any ruler. Under his reign, Armenia had grown into a real empire stretching from the Black Sea to the eastern Mediterranean, controlling parts of Mesopotamia and posing a threat to Syria. Proud and ambitious, he took on the title King of Kings, calling back to the ancient Persian monarchs to show he was on equal footing with any power. His new capital, Tigranocerta, was a symbol of that greatness, a city designed to shine with grand palaces, theaters, and walls under construction, mostly inhabited by people who had been forcibly moved from conquered regions. When Lucullus demanded the surrender of Mithridates, Tigranes saw it as an unbearable insult. Refusing that demand not only defended family loyalty, but also reaffirmed his status as an independent ruler. Lucullus responded boldly. He crossed the Euphrates River with a surprisingly small army, which ancient writers estimated at between 12,000 and 16,000 men. Even taking that number much taller, he was a tiny force compared to the enemy waiting for him. His advance was quick and precise. Instead of wasting time on sieges, he moved fast, securing strategic towns that served as grain stores and communication points. That move forced Tigranes to react before finishing his preparations. The Armenian king, who was then dealing with uprisings in the west of his empire, called on his vassals to gather a huge army. The chronicles talk about huge numbers of up to 200,000 fighters, with thousands of heavily armored cavalry, archers, and a massive infantry. The logistics for such a huge force seem unlikely, and modern studies bring the estimate down to a more realistic range of 70,000 to 100,000 soldiers. Still an overwhelming advantage, but Lucullus counted on one decisive edge: the discipline of the Roman legions. His veteran men, seasoned from campaigns in Asia Minor, were trained to march fast and hold their ground, forming up under any pressure and pulling off complex maneuvers with precision. He knew that with the right terrain and a well-calculated strike, he could turn his apparent weakness into an opportunity. While Tigranes gathered his forces, Lucullus moved ahead and took control of the hills around Tigranocerta, securing a key lookout point. Instead of launching a direct assault, he tightened the siege and waited. It wasn't just patience. The Armenian king couldn't let his capital be threatened without responding. In the ancient world, a ruler had to show visible strength. Staying behind the walls meant admitting weakness and risking rebellions among their subjects. Besides, the city's loyalty was shaky. Many of its inhabitants had been relocated against their will. Some old sources even hint at episodes of internal betrayal, though there's no solid proof. The fact is, Tigranocerta wasn't unbeatable, and its fall would be a devastating political blow. Every day of apparent stillness was all part of the Roman plan. Their goal was to force Tigranes to fight on Rome's chosen ground and at their chosen time, the battle that would decide Armenia's fate and become one of the most brilliant campaigns in Roman military history. It was about to kick off when Tigranes II, the Great, finally gathered his army. The scene impressed even the Roman historians. Plutarch describes a sea of men, infantry in endless lines, thousands of archers, and above all, the cataphracts. The cataphracts were heavily armored cavalry, covered head to toe along with their horses. Although some sources mention over 200,000 fighters, modern studies suggest a more believable number, between 70,000 and 100,000 soldiers, still an overwhelming advantage compared to the roughly 15,000 Romans. The arrival of this army was a real show of power. The cataphracts, clad in iron or bronze plates, protecting both rider and horse, carried long contest lances designed to break through single-strike formations. The thunder of hooves and metal must have felt like an earthquake. In ancient times, few troops inspired so much fear. Just their presence could break less disciplined armies. Tigranes chose a high position near Tigranocerta. From there, his archers controlled the valley, and the cavalry had room to charge downhill. His advisors suggested trapping the Romans in a siege and wearing them down, but the king, confident in his numbers, laughed it off. The chronicles credit him with the phrase, "There are too many to be ambassadors and too few to be an army." For him, victory wasn't in doubt, just a matter of time. Lucullus watched the deployment coldly. He knew a head-on clash would be suicide. The cataphract's strength could break a stationary line, so he came up with a bold move. He left Lucius Marcius Murena in charge of part of the troops to hold the enemy in place, while he, with 2 cohorts, just a fraction of the force, the army was moving secretly through the hills, hidden in the folds of the terrain. To Tigranes, this move looked like a cowardly retreat. Convinced that fear had won over the Romans, he let his guard down at the back. But Lucullus wasn't running away. He was going after the enemy's logistics hub. Behind the Armenian lines stretched a huge camp with food supplies, weapons, pack animals, and thousands of servants. In ancient wars, losing that center meant way more than just running out of supplies. They caused instant panic. The timing was perfect. Coming down the hill, the Romans crashed into the camp with overwhelming force. Merchants, servants, and non-combatants fled in chaos, their stampede colliding with the Armenian infantry and cavalry. Officers' orders were lost in a roar of shouts and clashes. Meanwhile, Murena launched a frontal attack. Her legionaries, veterans of tough campaigns, advanced with their shields locked together, holding the discipline they were always known for. The cataphracts, caught between the chaos at the rear and pressure from the cohorts, couldn't find any room to move. What was supposed to be an unstoppable charge turned into a frozen mass. The massive crowd that was meant to crush them ended up becoming an obstacle for itself. In just a few hours, one of the most feared forces in the East started falling apart against a much smaller army. That was a masterstroke. It wasn't just about having better weapons, but about mastering timing, terrain, and military psychology. The surprise attack from behind and the pressure from the front threw off an enemy that blindly trusted in their numbers. Lucullus's plan was working perfectly, and the fate of the battle and Tigranes' empire was practically sealed. Chaos spread through the Armenian camp like wildfire. Servants, traders, and pack animals ran around aimlessly, crashing into the infantry lines. The officers' orders got lost amid the shouting and chaos. What was supposed to be a disciplined army turned into a confused mob. Surprise had done its job. Before the first Roman spear even hit a shield, Tigranes' discipline had already snapped. Up front, Lucius Marcius Marina kept up the pressure. His strikes moved with the calm of battle-hardened veterans, shield against shield, throwing their pila to break enemy lines, then closing in with their short swords. At the same time, the force led by Lucullus kept tearing through the rear lines, setting tents on fire and destroying supplies. Panic spread like wildfire. The Armenian units caught in the crossfire started breaking apart. The cataphracts, the pride of the Armenian king, took the worst hit. Their strength was in their fast charges. Without room to move, they were stuck, easy targets for the legionnaires. What should have been a crushing iron wave turned into a frozen block that couldn't do a thing. Many fell like rain by javelins. Others got trapped among their own men who were fleeing. Tigranes, who had started out confident, soon realized how bad things were. Sources say he left the battlefield, tossing his crown aside so he wouldn't be recognized. Whether that's true or just a rumor spread by Roman historians, it symbolizes his defeat. Without clear leadership, the resistance in Armenia fell apart. What began as an orderly retreat turned into a desperate escape. When night fell, the army that was supposed to crush Rome was wiped out. The casualty numbers vary. Plutarch mentions over 100,000 dead, and even the unbelievable claim that only 5 Romans fell. These figures are almost certainly propaganda, but show the real imbalance. The mix of discipline, speed, and boldness gave a small army an impossible victory. After the battle, Tigranocerta opened its gates without a fight. The city, built as a symbol of an empire, was looted by the Romans. They took huge amounts, riches considered among the most valuable spoils Rome got from the east. But Lucullo was politically practical. He respected the locals' lives and let the Greek settlers go back home, trying to win their loyalty. The results were immediate. Tigranes' reputation took a big hit. Lots of conquered peoples, from Mesopotamia to Syrian cities, seized the chance to rebel. Armenia's natural rival, Parthia, expanded its influence. Mithridates' Sax, although he escaped, ended up more and more isolated. The balance of power in the Near East shifted in just a few weeks. For Lucullus, the victory was huge, but it also marked the start of new challenges. The mountainous terrain, harsh winters, and his troops being worn out after years of campaigning kept him from fully chasing down the fugitives. The war dragged on for years, and command in the east eventually passed to Pompey the Great, who took credit for the final phase of the conflict. Still, Lucullus returned to Rome as a respected general. He became famous and retired early from military life, choosing to live a lavish lifestyle that also made him well known for hosting extravagant feasts. Beyond the story, the Battle of Tigranocerta taught a lasting lesson. Lucullus showed that strategy can beat brute force. He picked the battlefield, struck the enemy's rear, used fear as a weapon, and turned the enemy's superior numbers into their downfall. Generals from Caesar at Pharsalus to Belisarius at Dara studied this. I'll use this episode as an example of how a disciplined and well-led army can win against all odds. So, back in October of 69 BC, a small Roman force wrote one of the most incredible chapters in military history. It wasn't just a victory, it was a lasting proof that boldness and smarts can tip the scales, even against a whole empire. If this story about the Battle of Tigranocerta helped you see how a brilliant strategy could defeat. If you love empires, subscribe to Imperium Total so you don't miss any more episodes of great military history. Drop us a comment. What part of this Roman victory surprised you the most? Thanks for joining us on this trip to the past, and see you in the next chapter of history. The standard for Roman soldiers was to attack with the right hand and use the shield with the left. That raises the question, were there left-handed legionaries in the Roman army? And what happened to a soldier who naturally used his left hand? Was that an advantage or a disadvantage on the battlefield? To answer this, we first need to understand how would a left-handed soldier affect the organization of a Roman legion. A left-handed soldier would have a significant impact on the structure and effectiveness of a Roman legion, especially in military formations. In a traditional formation, each legionary had a specific role. The shield was used to protect the left side of the soldier while he held the gladius with his right hand. This arrangement allowed soldiers to protect each other with their shields, forming a strong line of defense, while at the same time staying ready to attack with their swords, efficiently positioned.